So why has this strategy been beneficial to these clients? It's because they get two rental incomes from one property, and the granny flat actually helps them with the cash flow. Right now, the rental income received from the front property and the granny flat is about $1,100 as you speak per week. And the granny flat costs these days have actually shot up quite a bit. So one thing you have to understand is, yes, they're building granny flat for cash flow purposes, but that's not the main reason. It's a part of their retirement planning as well. Good day everyone, I'm your host and thanks for joining me in another episode of the Mortgage Chat. Today, I want to show you the granny flat strategy that me and my clients have put in place since 2017 and how this strategy has helped them accumulate more properties throughout the years, especially helping them with the cash flow and maintaining the loans. So these couples have been my clients since 2017 and they love the strategy of a granny flat. So why has this strategy been beneficial to these clients? It's because they get two rental incomes from one property. They can get one rental income from the front dwelling and they can get one rental income from the granny flat, which is in addition to when they purchased the property which only had the front property to begin with. And the granny flat actually helps them with the cash flow because the rental income that you're going to receive from the granny flat exceeds the cost of holding and getting the loan for the granny flat. And I'll give you a quick example later on down this video. So this is the third property that they're going to have a granny flat on them. So in 2017, they purchased the property for $680,000. And back then in 2017, granny flats weren't that expensive. It cost them about $130,000 to build the granny flat, plus the council approvals, etc., etc., etc. Right now, the rental income received from the front property and the granny flat is about $1,100 as you speak per week. That gives it a rental yield of around 7.06%, which is 100% positive geared right now as we speak, even at these current high interest rates. The second project they done was in 2021, around COVID time, where the property prices were sort of stagnating or even dropping a little bit back then, and they took the opportunity to purchase a property. So they purchased this property for $935,000 and the granny flat cost actually went up a little bit back then. So the total cost for a granny flat plus council approval actually shot up from $130,000 to about $150,000. So his total spend on the project was around $1.085. And the rental yield for this property now is around 5.51%, which is still not bad for New South Wales property, or let's call it Sydney. Now in 2024, they just purchased a new property down the south of New South Wales for about $900,000. And the granny flat costs these days have actually shot up quite a bit. So to build a granny flat, plus council approvals, is around $200,000 right now. So the client is all in for about $1.1 million for this particular project. And this third project they're doing is actually a good example of showing you how getting a smaller loan for a granny flat actually increases your cash flow and your rental yield significantly. So guys, if you're not watching this video and just listening to the podcast, I suggest just quickly go onto YouTube and just look at this video for this particular section, because this will show out all the numbers on how a granny flat can actually help you. So you can see here, the house originally cost them $900,000 and they can actually rent this property out for $600 per week. The rental yield is around 3.46%, which is not bad at all. Okay, but you can see here, so with the granny flat, the client needs a total funding of $200,000 and we're going to get that in the form of a loan for them. Okay, now they can rent this property out for $350 per week, which gives them a 9.1% yield based on that loan only. So you can see already here that just with a small loan for building a granny flat and renting it out for $350 per week, the rental yield just on that is 9.1%. If you look at the next line, the total cost for the house plus the granny flat is going to be 1.1 mil. And the total rent is going to be $950 per week, which gives them a rental yield of 4.49%. So the rental yield originally went from 3.46%, and just by adding a loan of $200,000 on it, and the rental yield actually increased to 4.49%. That's an increase of around 1% rental yield, which is not bad at all. And this is why a lot of people want to build a granny flat, because it helps with the cash flow and the rental income. And let's break that down a little bit more with actual dollar figures. Okay, so As you can see here, the loan is $900,000 because he's borrowed 100% of the total cost. At 6.5% interest only, the repayment is $4,875. The rental income is $600 per week. If I minus that monthly rental income from the loan, their cash outlay is $2,275 per month. That's the cash outlay before any depreciation, any negative gearing, etc., etc., etc. Let's say for argument's sake, they've borrowed that $200,000 for the granny flat. And now the loan actually went from 900 to 1.1 mil. At 6.5%, the repayments at interest only is $5,958.33. Because of the rental from the granny flat, which far exceeds the interest cost for maintaining that $200,000 loan, the cash outlay is actually only $1,841.33. So now you can actually see, because of the granny flat, the client's cash flow is actually better by $433.44. And this is why granny flats have become more and more common, especially for bigger blocks. But you know what? The builders also understand this, and that's why they've been jacking up their costs as well, right? Mate, how can a granny flat went from $130 to $150 to $200,000 now? Doesn't really make sense to me. And let's just break it down a little bit further. So the granny flat was $200,000 in total cost. So if I go $200,000 at 6.5% times about 6.5%, okay, the yearly interest on that loan is only $13,000. If I say the granny flat can be rented out for a minimum of $350 per week, if I times it by 52 weeks, that means the rental income for the year is $18,200. If I minus that from $13,000, which is the cost of holding the granny flat loan, I'm on top $5,200, which is not bad at all. That's why this $5,200 is actually helping that $900,000 loan with the cash flow. This is the third property the client has built a granny flat at the back. But what I didn't mention is these properties are all in Sydney. And they purposely done this because they want to invest in Sydney, they believe in Sydney, and all they know about is Sydney. And the only way to maintain this debt in cash flow is to build a granny flat with it. And this is a strategy they are comfortable with because they're holding these properties for a long term. And you're probably thinking, hey Tony, but all your example just then is all on interest-only repayments. Why don't you pay P&I? Or just a FYI, they do have a primary place of residence that they still have a debt on it. So they'd rather pay off that loan first before they pay off the investment loans. However, just a full disclosure, they're not all about Sydney. They do have an investment in WA, in South Australia as well, which has done very well the last 3 years, as everyone would know. So one thing you have to understand is, yes, they're building granny flat for cash flow purposes, but that's not the main reason. It's a part of their retirement planning as well. So one of the goals before they retire is they're hoping to pay off all the debts in these loans in Sydney, and they want to live off the rental income. So they're hoping by the time they retire, they have 3 unencumbered properties with no loans on it. All of them have rental incomes from the front of the house and from the granny flat. So they're going to have 2 rental incomes for each property. And based on today's dollars, it's about $166 between the both of them they can live off, which is not bad. That's around 80 grand each, which is very close to the average salary in Sydney right now. So what are the cons of a granny flat? Well, top of my head, I think there's 2 cons, especially with these clients that they've purchased 3 properties in New South Wales. Number 1 is land tax. Number 2, in case that they do need to sell one of these properties, well, how many people in the secondary market will want to buy a property with a granny flat at the back of it? And one last thing is the dwelling at the front was built around 20, 30 years ago. So it's significantly older than the granny flat, which is probably built 2, 3 years ago, or even brand new. So what are you going to do when the house at the front deteriorates and you can't live in it anymore? That's a big concern. As I mentioned, the granny flat costs around $200,000 to build, plus council approvals. A lot of people think just because this costs $200,000 to build, they think the property will automatically get $200,000 added to it. So for argument's sake, your property's worth $1 million. Just because the granny flat costs $200,000 to build, they think, hey, do you know what? The property is now worth $1.2 million. Well, based on my experience, it's not like that. So what we've been seeing is just because the cost is $200,000, we're actually been seeing valuers valuing it at only $100,000, $120,000 more. So you got around $80,000 in shortfall. So I'm going to give you a quick example right now. So let's say for argument's sake, your property is worth $1 million and your loan right now is $700,000. And the cost for the granny flat is $200,000. So your loan needs to be $900,000 now. And if the valuation goes from 1.1 to 1.2, then it's perfect for you because the LVR is going to be 75%. So you can borrow 100% of the construction costs. If the valuation doesn't come back at $1.2 million, and rather it comes back at $1.1 million, and your LVR comes back at 81, 82%, well, you're just short. So either you're going to pay LMI, which is lender's mortgage insurance, to do that construction loan, or you have to cover that shortfall with your own cash. So that is one thing you have to watch out for. And a lot of these granny flat builders don't understand the concept and the logistics of the valuation on the back end. So everybody, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. It's just one of the strategies that we put in place for one of our clients throughout the years. It's done really well for them. I'm not saying this strategy helps everyone and is suited for everyone because everyone has their own strategies. Okay, so please only use this as a guide. As always, it's your host, Tony Xia from the Mortgage Chat, and we hope you see you next time.